Good morning, everyone. We are at the Lido. It's breakfast time, actually late breakfast time. We're doing the Lido and for breakfast, and then we hope to go out into the court. There's a museum there, and we'd like to go check out the museum a little bit because we have an excursion at 1 o'clock. From 1 to 3, it's a boat ride looking at hideaways and famous places or something. But yeah, it's finally a beautiful day in Bermuda. So I'm glad that we had an excursion today because everybody's excursions yesterday got canceled. So some of those came up again today, but the timing of ours kind of prohibited taking any of the other excursions. But maybe we'll come back to Bermuda another time. Anyway, let me show you the view out the window at breakfast right now. Okay, the end of the point, and you can see how big this fort is. Look at all of these old buildings made out of whatever that is. I forget, they have a name for it in Florida. I forget what they call it. So this is the view out the window. And see that circle? Let's see if I can use my finger to get in here. That circle right there. I saw that in front of someone's house somewhere driving back yesterday. And then that looks like more fort over there behind the dual clock towers. But that back there, it looks like it's more of that fort material. So I have the feeling this whole area was once the fort. You look way in the background there, you'll see more of that material. So yeah, it's a beautiful day in Bermuda today. Thank goodness, because it hasn't been nice since we've been here. I found biscuits and gravy after I got potatoes. What did you get? My breakfast. Well, I found a second duck. It wasn't here in the casino, it was in a plant, the main area that I didn't want to film there. There's too many people around. Yeah. So we are about to get on the ship, the Excellence, and go to famous places and hideaways or something. You know in a minute. We are about to leave for our tour.
Okay, Robert.
The skipper says he's scared because we're in the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, I'm shooting through the window of our boat for excursion, but the Carnival Legend is parked next to us. I'm sure I'll get a better shot. Our ship, Mariner of the Seas, in Bermuda.
Okay, welcome on board the Excellence. Welcome to Bermuda. This is our famous homes and hideaways tour. Before we get going to take care of a bit of housekeeping, to let you know that we do have bathrooms on board. And down these steps right here, left to right makes no difference between you. Now, I know some of you may remember that back in 2017, Bermuda actually hosted the America's Cup, and they're basically of equal acreage. Now, some of you may have told your friends and family that you were coming to the island of Bermuda. Usain Bolt. Michael Phelps is not from the Caribbean. It's Caribbean. Caribbean, yes. Yeah, Usain Bolt. Yeah, right here in Bermuda, yeah. Right here in Bermuda. We are looking over there to our left. That area that you see over there, that is known as Spanish Point. Spanish Point. And it got its name after the British got here because when they went into that area, they found a lot of Spanish artifacts. And they realized, hey, the Spanish have been hanging out in Bermuda before we got here. The answer. But that long-tailed bird is actually a harbinger of spring for us. It comes in around late February, early March, and it stays until mid to late September. As you glance around the landscape, you're going to notice that the majority of the roofs are white. And the reason for that, we have no rivers, no streams, no lakes. So the most popular way for us to get fresh water is to harvest the rain. And we also have to be very conservative because we don't know when it's going to rain. Okay? So you cannot be in the shower for an hour staircase. Now that's not the best example of what they call it. We'll see one that's an example of what they call welcome staircase. And when I was first doing this tour, I noticed that a lot of the houses in Bermuda, they have chimneys. Well, we don't get that code here in Bermuda that we need chimneys for warmth, so I did a little investigating. And come to find out, the reason they put chimneys on homes back then, cooking, used as ovens, used as ovens. Now, as a result of that treasonous act that happened in 1775, out of that came a profession here in Bermuda, because our governor, he was still pro-England. He was still pro-England. And when he found out that those gentlemen stole that gunpowder, he was very upset. So he charged these merchants, he gave them the authority to attack any American ship that came across, and they were basically called privateers. They're basically legal pirates. Legal pirates. And of course, called privateering was a very big profession. Ahead of us, just slightly to the left, but up on the hill there, you're going to see that long yellow house. It has the tinted windows and it has a matching cottage on the water side. Well, that belongs to the Butterfield family in Bermuda, and they're the owners of our very first bank here in Bermuda. Well, we actually have a yacht race that occurs every other year between Newport, Rhode Island and Bermuda. And what do you think it is called? There you go. It's called the Newport to Bermuda Yacht Race. I tell you, we don't stay up all night thinking of extra names, okay? You sail from Newport, you come to Bermuda, you're in a yacht, okay? And it happens every other year, and it's what they call a year bout. So the next time we actually sail from Bermuda to Newport. Well, back in 1980, a gentleman sailed from Newport and almost lost his life, had to deal with high wind for about 6 hours. He was literally the last one standing because the rest of the crew, they got violently ill. But he brought that boat into Bermuda safely, and they hung out for a bit, and when the rest of the crew was ready to go back home, he said, I think I'll stay a little longer. And to our left, ahead of us, that beige house you see there, behind the buoys, that is known as Undercliff, and that is where the gentleman unfortunately wrote his last album. His last album was called Double Fantasy, and that gentleman's name, John Lennon. John Lennon, right here in Bermuda, and he hadn't recorded for about 4 or 5 years, and in his own words, excuse me, in his own words, the life-harrowing experience, that gave him the confidence to go back into the studio, and voila. And he got the name for the album Double Fantasy from a flower that he saw here at our botanical gardens called the Freesia flower. And if you ever go to the botanical gardens, there's actually a monument that they erected there in his honor.
There's fish jumping around. Oh, look at all the fish jumping. You see them, Jer?
Okay, I'm taking. Oh,
You need water containers. Now the area that we're going into right now, fish are jumping. The area that we're going into right now, on this tour we call it Millionaire's Row. Now we do have a Billionaire's Row, but that's in a place called Tuckerstown. That's near the airport. That's where the likes of Mayor Bloomberg from New York, Ross Perot, while he's alive from Texas, that's where they reside, and many other celebrities. Now, but I'll tell you, that Ross Perot guy, we didn't take too kindly to him back in the 80s when he first came here to Bermuda, and I'll tell you why. Because he couldn't get his yacht into a certain area, what did he do? He blew up the obstruction. You know what the obstruction was? Coral reefs. Yes, he did. And I'll tell you how arrogant he did it. He literally asked what was the fine for destroying coral reefs. They told him, he paid it and went ahead and blew it out. Good answer. You're on the ball today. You know, I choose I never heard of that before, But this area that we're in right now is actually called Fairylands. And just to put things in perspective, the average starting cost of homes in Bermuda is going to be around $1.2 million. Of course, you can get homes for less, but that's the average starting cost. And the average starting cost of homes in this area is going to be around $4 million.
Okay, thank you.
Now, this beautiful home that we have here to our left, the terracotta one, that is known as a Longside. And that belonged to a gentleman by the name of Mr. Harold Conyers. He's actually an architect, and this house has actually won awards for its architecture. It's basically an old Bermuda style. Now, you see that semicircle thing above the windows? They look like eyebrows? Yeah? What do we call them here in Bermuda? Eyebrows. There you go. You get the gist. And once upon a time, they actually had a function, and that was to prevent the rain from dripping into the windows here. Now, that other structure you see there to the right of the boat there on the dock, the little square with the triangle roof, that is known as a buttery. A buttery. And that, too, once upon a time, had a function. Half of it was built below ground, need to say the other half above, and that's where the early settlers would have stored their perishables. And when you get around the island, they all look just like that. just like that. Needless to say, we have refrigerators and we don't need it like that. Sometimes people are paying homage, and sometimes you see that design as entrances to their homes, but it's designed after a. Here, this belongs to the Gray family. Their claim to fame, they started a business called Orbis Investments. Now, one of the nice things I love about this home is that railing that you see on the second floor, that's made out of Bermuda cedar. Now, Bermuda cedar is very instrumental in the survival, or was very instrumental, for the survival of the early settlers. Not just for the wood, it actually produced these berries that they will boil up and then drink the syrup. Well, unfortunately, during World War II, when America came here to build their bases, unintentionally, of course, came with them a little tick, a little mite, and by 1970 had wiped out nearly 90% of our cedar trees. Yeah. But they are protected now. They are protected. So, as they say, we're not supposed to cut them down. Now, as Captain Jamie is bringing us into the little cove here, you're going to see nestled over there in the corner the long pink house, not the one that we're going across right now, but nestled with the lawn with all the chimneys. That is known as Mayfair, and that belonged to Bermuda's first self-made millionaire. His name was Mr. Fernandez Perry, and he had a chain of stores in Bermuda called Piggly Wiggly. Yeah, Piggly Wiggly, we had them here. And if you get around the island, if you come across these stores called the Marketplace, well, they were the former Piggly Wiggly's, about 8 or 9 of them. And he was also very instrumental in getting health laws passed here in Bermuda, so much so that they named the floor after him at our hospital, Cooper's Island. It's actually a nature reserve. That's actually where NASA has its tracking station here in Bermuda, and they're replacing all the Castorina trees there with the strain of cedar tree that survived the blight between 1940 and 1970. Well, we were mentioning earlier that we are British. Believe it or not, we are actually self-governing. Bermuda makes its own laws, its own rules and laws, and we have our own constitution. However, the city of Hamilton and the town of St. George's, they're what they call corporations. Actually, the imagination were they Boy Scouts, because one of them admitted to committed killing the police commissioner a few months before that. Yeah, but they felt they couldn't have done that because they rioted, and it was literally 3 precision shots, the work of a marksman. And as they say, those 2 guys couldn't start a piss up in a brewery, let alone kill the governor, the ADC, and the dog. And we say all of that because over here to our left, the pink house you see there with the navy blue blinds, that is known as Tideway, and that was the private residence of our then governor, Sir Richard Sharples. It is still in the family today because that's where his sons and their families, that's where they reside. At 5. Oh, because I'm saying this tour gets back at 6. Okay, that's going to be a little dicey there, Captain Jamie. Refuel. Head west. Go for a little ride here. Here we go. Well, to our left, that yellow house that you see there, that is known as Seaford, and that belongs to a gentleman by the name of Donald Mackenzie. He inherited the rights to Pepsi-Cola in South America. But unfortunately, he only receives 1 lousy cent for every can. Yes, he is sitting pretty. As a matter of fact, that house was on the market a few years ago for $14 million. He wasn't able to sell it, but I think he did just as good because he now rents it out for $25,000 a month. Wow. Not bad, not bad. Now coming up is going to be on your left. This is going to be a little white cottage on the waterside. It's actually my favorite house on this entire tour. It's a little cottage with 2 opposing chimneys. This is actually where Mark Twain stayed, or one of the places that Mark Twain stayed when he visited Bermuda. And he visited Bermuda quite often. And he has a very famous quote pertaining to Bermuda, and I paraphrase, "When you all die, you go to heaven. When I die, I'm going to Bermuda." Yeah. My other favorite Mark Twain quote, "You go to heaven for the climate, you go to hell for the company." Pretty much, yeah. Now coming up is to our left there, you're going to see that pink house. It has 4 chimneys. It is called
4 chimneys.
4 chimneys, there you go. Owned by the Gibbons family. I tell you, we just stay up. They're owned by the Gibbons family, very wealthy family. So David Gibbons, he was actually our premier, sort of like your president, in the early 70s. Time, he's actually the 6th wealthiest man in the British Commonwealth. Now here in Bermuda, this family, they own pretty much everything. They own banks, capital G for Gibbons, which is now actually Clarion Bank. They own car dealerships, they own clothing stores, they even own property in Times Square. Wow. This family, yeah, very wealthy. For the size of Bermuda, a lot of times we actually find ourselves, as they say, boxing above our weight. We used to export a few things. One of the things we used to export, onions. Yes, it does. And the other product that we exported, Easter lilies. As a matter of fact, well, we cannot say it anymore, but we used to send Her Majesty Queen a bouquet of Easter lilies every Easter by our governor. And we say all that because we're now in a place called Swansea Bay, and it gets its name from the White House over there to your left with the green blinds. That is known as Swansea, and that was owned by General Russell Hastings. He fought in the American Civil War. He's from the New England area, and when he retired, he and his wife, who was actually the niece of one of America's former presidents, Mr. Rutherford B. Hayes, they came here to Bermuda, and it was from this area here that they actually exported the bulbs, Easter lily bulbs, to florists in the New York and New England area. They're made out of limestone, pretty much. This is old volcanic, because actually Bermuda came from a volcano, yeah. And so the basic thing is limestone. So when it does rain, there are certain places in Bermuda that we call, they have lenses. So the fresh water actually seeps through the limestone and it settles above, it sits on top of the salt water. So there are certain depots, stations where these water trucks will fill up because that's where the lenses are. Close to 90% can have access. Like I said, but you have to pay that for that. And the other way is individual houses would have wells, but that water is basically brackish, and so you would use that primarily for flushing toilets, and over $10 a gallon, very expensive. So as you can imagine, many of us here, we have to have more than one job to make ends meet. Yeah, of course. Now tennis actually was actually introduced to the United States via Bermuda. Yeah, and from that home there. Now, tennis, as we know, was established around 1850. Well, in 1874, a lady by the name of Mary Outerbridge. She was born in the United States, but her parents were Bermudian, and this was their home. And she came to visit her parents, and she saw these two British servicemen playing this game she had never seen before, so she asked about it. They taught her how to play, gave her the rules, and she took that to Staten Island Cricket Club, and that is how tennis got introduced to the United States. Yeah. But you could tell that architecture is definitely not of Bermuda. It was actually from where they're from in England, because they were sailing from England to the United States, and they had 10,000 pounds, currency-wise, worth of rum and different wares to sell in the United States, and they had what they call a 90-day charter, which means they had 90 days to reach their final destination without penalty. Well, unfortunately for America, the 90 days was up. Fortunately for Bermuda, they had to come to the nearest port, and they've been here ever since. Now, the coral house that you see there with the green blinds, that is known as Bentley, and erected there in 1629, and the pink one to the right of it, that is known as Casa Rosa, erected there in 1631. These are two of the oldest houses that we have here in Harbor Road, Bermuda. Now, on Casa Rosa, the pink one, you're going to notice that white structure to the left. It looks like a little ski slope. Well, that is a water catchment. And again, as you appreciate, houses that are built very close to the water, they cannot have that tank underneath their house. So you have to have what we call an above-ground tank, and that is what that is. That was the same purpose as the roof. Now, folks, there's Beaumont up on the hill, also owned by the Goslings, the one that's flying the Bermuda flag there. Now, a lot of times we get asked here on the tour in terms of a source of income for the island. Well, once upon a time, the number one source of income for Bermuda was tourism. And the number two source of income was a thing called exempt companies. Now, they're basically companies that set up in Bermuda to avoid paying taxes, yeah? Well, back in the 80s when tourism was booming, I mean booming, we had a tourism minister. He considered you guys the McDonald's crowd. You were the hamburger crowd. He said, we don't want the hamburger crowd anymore. We want the caviar crowd. Well, they put all their money and effort into trying to attract such clientele. Well, it tanked. It failed. So we lost a lot of our tourists, and lost a lot of our hotels. So a lot of them have either been completely destroyed, or they've been converted into condominiums or into timeshare.
Oh, somebody's tented.
So yeah, like I said, a lot of those hotels have been converted. And over there to your right, you're going to see that pink and yellow building with the round tower. That site used to be one of Bermuda's major hotels known as the Bermudiana. Now in that site, it houses Chubb Insurance. Yeah, Chubb Insurance, yeah. Converted the Belmont into all condominiums. And they use this as the quote-unquote hotel part, and also this is what they call fractional ownership, which is just a fancy way of saying timeshare. Yeah, timeshare. Now, we were mentioning that the old Bermudiana Hotel is now Chubb Insurance. Well, between Bermuda, Bahamas, and the Cayman Islands, we're basically the insurance, reinsurance capitals of the world. Well, one of our most successful CEOs is a gentleman by the name of Brian Dupereau. He was born here in Bermuda, but he was raised in the United States. He went to St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, where he studied math, but he didn't want to become a math teacher, so he went into insurance, and he became an actuary. And if you don't know anything about actuaries, well, their starting salaries are at 6 figures. Starting salaries, yeah. And he at one time was the largest single donor to his alma mater in Philadelphia. And he also did a lot of relief work with one of America's former presidents, Mr. Jimmy Carter. Well, this is his wonderful home ahead of us, the long yellow one you see the two on the left with the green lights. That house is known as Paget Hall. And also it's basically an old, again, Bermuda style design. And you're going to notice on the first floor, you're going to notice those eyebrow things again. And the staircase that's going to come into view, this is a better example as to why they call those staircases welcoming arms. Because you'll see when it comes to the bottom of the staircases, they sort of flare out, basically saying, welcome, yeah. Basically saying welcome. Well, as of March 1st, this is something, yeah. Can you see the staircase? Yeah, as it clears out. Welcome. Yeah. Now, as of March 1st last year, this gentleman, he just resigned for being the CEO for AIG. Yeah, he was the CEO for AIG, just resigned March 1st last year. And it's reported that his very first year's paycheck for AIG, $40.1 million. Now that's the area that I was in over there to the left. That's actually known as salt kettle, and it gets its name from a process the early settlers used to do back in the day called salt mining, salt raking. Just basically gathering salt water and letting it evaporate. And we also did a lot of that in a place called the Turks and Caicos Island. Basically a one-pot deal. You boil up the codfish potato in, you have a side banana with Johnny bread or avocado pear. You have either a red sauce, based like a marinara sauce, or you have an onion butter sauce. Well, I'm going to share this with you. I hate fish. I can't stand fish. I love fishing, but I hate fish. However, when I was younger, my mother forced me to eat that codfish. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, she told me that I don't know where she found these people, but there was children starving in other parts of the world, so I had to eat it. Now, when we actually build houses here in Bermuda, once we get that roof on, before we paint it white, they actually have a ceremony, and it's called a roof wetting ceremony. Now, some may consider it alcohol abuse, because they literally take an entire bottle of the Gosling's black rum and they pour that, on the roof, yeah. That's why Captain Jamie, he likes to hang around a lot of construction sites when they're putting on the roof, yeah. Well, this is his house there. It is known as Spithead, and it gets its name from an old British shipyard. And you're going to look between the main house and the little cottage to the right, and you're going to see that dome-like structure in the back. Well, that's an example of the above-ground tank, and that is where Mr. Hezekiah Frith was hiding his loot, yeah. Now, when many recount this next portion of his life, it's a matter of semantics, because he was out there on one of his little escapades and robbing and stealing from the ship, and some say he rescued this little French lady. However, some say he kidnapped her. Yeah, but either way, he brought her back here to Chez Maison, back here to his house, and he kept her here as his mistress. Now, all of the subsequent owners of this property have all said they have seen her ghost. Iron Lighthouse in the Western Hemisphere. If you dare, it's 182 steps to the top. And Bermuda is another world, 700 miles at sea, and the way the people reach. Now, we were given two reasons as to why she wouldn't go. One, we were told that she was afraid of heights, and she didn't want to go up there. Now, the other one was not as flattering. It's not as flattering. They said she couldn't fit. Yeah.
You're right behind you. Easy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow, look at that bigger guy. Oops, I'm getting the dock. The sun is right here and I can't see. actually put this camera in the water, but I'm not going to. Because then I got a wet camera strap to deal with.